Very good. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is a very important gathering about community warning system and emergency preparedness. We are so fortunate to have Lorena Herrera from Community Warning System and Rick Kovar from the County Office of Emergency Services. I let them decide who goes first, and please, let's start. So they're gonna talk about Community Warning System and Office of Emergency Services. I appreciate it if you could hold your questions until after their presentation is done, and then you can ask your questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Sohelia. Hi, everyone. This is Lorena Herrera. I am the Community Warning System Manager. I apologize in advance for not having my video on. I am working from home and I don't have the ability to get that kind of fixed right now. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me see. Here we go. Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So Rick and I talked and we kind of made the decision to have one presentation that covers the community warning system portion, but also holistically disaster preparedness, emergency preparedness, because as you know, community warning system is part of emergency preparedness. And so when we talk about community warning system and the functions of community warning system, our role in disseminating alerts on behalf of public safety agencies, we also have to take in account all the things that the community should be aware of and how the community should prepare um, for an emergency or a disaster. So today, like I said, Rick and I are going to be going back and forth on this presentation. And so this presentation will cover, how we can be ready, what to do when we get a notification, a community warning system notification, taking action, and then how to stay safe during an emergency. We'll also provide a couple of additional resources that you all can take back and go through on your own time. But really, like I said, community warning system is part of the overall preparedness messaging. And so that's why Rick and I decided to do this as a dual presentation um, so that you can understand holistically how we function in the county. So, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rick. And he'll start us off with the presentation, and then I will then come in as part of the community warning.
Yeah, thanks, Lorena. I do appreciate the opportunity for us to speak to you guys. I feel like this group is really engaged in preparedness, so a lot of this is going to probably be review. So, but this is our standard presentation that we're doing. And to Lorena's point, we're really trying to combine the concept of alert and warning and preparedness, both from a response perspective, but also from individual resident perspective. So, getting the message is just part of the whole holistic response to disasters and emergencies. So you get the message, but you also then have to make decisions as a resident. And so um, this may be a little bit different of a concept than you've seen, in the past. You've seen a CWS presentation, you've seen a preparedness presentation. We're now combining those two. So, with that being said, I'll just jump in here and start talking about the readiness side of it, and then we'll be tag teaming. And Lorena will be speaking specifically to the community warning system and alert and warning and how it impacts you as residents. So we have conceptually the way that this presentation is gonna flow is one understanding why we're here, why we're talking about preparedness, and that's because we live in a county that is of high risk, and I'll touch on that, and we'll talk about what you can do and what tools you can do as individuals to be better prepared to respond if and when that emergency happens in your community, and then how to get more information if that emergency is happening. So if we can go to the next slide. So starting out, I know this community that we're speaking to has very high risk specifically to wildfire, but also earthquakes. What we do from an emergency management perspective is assess the whole of the county and the risks that the county faces. And so there are a lot of risks. We do every 5 years, we do a hazard mitigation plan, and that hazard mitigation plan identifies those risks and ranks those risks. So just to give you a little high level perspective on risk. So, one of my soapbox items is something that FEMA has done, and they did what they call a national risk index assessment, and they have assessed all 3,007 counties in the United States. I know they're not all counties; some of them are boroughs, bureaus, and things like that. But just think of a county. When I say 3,007 counties, that covers all 50 states. They assess for natural hazard risk, what the potential impacts of those hazards are, what the ability for the community is to recover from those disasters, and a little of the social side of it on the how well the community can respond to it. So they do this assessment. They look at all the risks. And out of 3,007 counties, Contra Costa is the 17th most at-risk county in the United States. So that's why we're here. That's why you're here wanting more information in how you're collaborating as a community to be better prepared. So that's a kind of it's a daunting statistic, but I think it's important when we're talking about needs and risk and how we're going to address those. The National Risk Index is really helpful for me as an emergency manager to be able to communicate to our electeds and to our communities why disaster preparedness is so important for Contra Costa County. We have a higher risk than Butte County, which burned in 2018, 14,000 homes. We have a higher risk than Sonoma and Napa and Marin counties that have all burned in the 2017 North Bay wildfires. So I don't want to scare this group, but I do want to be clear that we are at a very high risk, and this is why we're here talking about it. So we're not obviously earthquake is our number one risk. When we say that, it's not the risk of it happening, it's the risk and the impact. So a large scale earthquake on the Hayward Fault is definitely going to be devastating to West County. Wildfire and flood slash landslides are the three highest risks that we have as a county. But we have impacts from climate change. We have dams and levees. Our East County with the levees are at risk. Obviously, drought, sea level rise is something new that we're assessing and what that impact is going to be on our communities. Severe weather and tsunami and lastly here is for wildfire. So those are the natural hazard risks. That doesn't mean there aren't others, but these are the ones that we have the highest percentage chance of having impacts on the county. And then we also looked at technological and human caused. So cybersecurity is a huge threat to us as government and industry. I know that there was a cyber attack on two cities in Contra Costa County last year. I think it was Pleasant Hill and Oakley that shut down their government operations for a few days. So that's something that we're starting to really flex and build up capacity to be able to be better prepared to respond to potential cybersecurity threats on our infrastructure. Obviously, hazard materials are a huge thing and a huge impact in the county. We have a lot of business, both petrochemical and hazardous materials in the county, so that's a big risk. Utility interruptions. We just went through a red flag just a couple of days ago, and last month we actually had a public safety power shutdown that PG&E did out in far East County. So we're still seeing those type of things, active shooter, criminal events, and terrorism. So these are the things that we as an organization are looking at and trying to build capacity and planning around how we're going to respond to all of these things. So next slide. So this is where our coordination and collaboration with the community comes in. And so being ready and understanding what your needs are as a community. And so general needs, what medical conditions, when we think about all those potential impacts from the previous slide, you as a homeowner, as a family member, as a household, it's important for you in your preparedness efforts to think about if you have special medical needs or dietary requirements that if there was going to be a disaster impact where you're not going to be able to go to the store, you're not going to be able to get those resources. Do you have what you need to be prepared for a few days? I don't know about you guys, but I have a lot of pets in my house. I've got dogs, cats, tortoises, chickens, and so we have to be prepared. My family has to be prepared to, also take care of them, not just our people, but our pets. So what we want you guys to think about is what are you doing to also think about your pets? Transportation, this is a huge issue, whether you have transportation issues, you don't have access to transportation or in an evacuation scenario, it's something where it's going to be harder for you as a resident through other, medical conditions or access issues. How are you going to get out if you need to get out? And then disabilities, which we talk about. Do you have accommodation devices? Um, or do you have accessible abilities to get out if this happens? And I don't want to go too deep into this, but it's something that in an evacuation, and I know Sohelia has talked about this too, is we really want to remind residents that you don't have to wait for an evacuation order to start thinking about getting out if it's going to take you a little bit longer to get out. Um, you really need to be engaged in your community and your community notifications and media to see what's happening to make decisions as quickly as possible. Sometimes you don't want to wait for the government to tell you what to do. And I don't mean that in any other way than we really want our community members to be as proactive as possible to be able to take care of themselves in time of emergency. And then resource wise, we talk about when we're doing preparedness, we talk about have a kit, make a plan, and on top of that, I think one of the things that communities are most successful in this type of environment when there's these type of disasters is do you know your neighbors? Do you have a neighborhood plan? Do you have a community plan? Do you have a neighbor across town that if you had to leave your neighborhood, can you go there and hang out or if you can't get to a disaster shelter. So we really want to encourage community members to be really proactive. And it's not that we as government and first responders aren't going to be there to help, uh, but it's going to be tough in a large scale event to have enough resources. And so we really are trying to encourage that self-sufficiency as much as possible. Next slide. So I mentioned, have a plan. There's a lot of resources out there, and we'll have some resources at the end of the slide. And what that's going to be hard for you to click on those links, but I'll make sure that we send all those links over to Sohelia so she can share with the group after this. But this is just a reminder, having some kind of plan before you have to execute it is important. And I'm as guilty of not having a good family plan. We've talked about it when our kids were younger. We talked about evacuating, and if I'm not there, what their plan's going to be. But we really haven't refreshed that in the last 5 years. And so I say that honestly because I know it's really easy for us to lecture and say you need to have a plan. I understand it's really tough with life and everything um, that comes up, but it is important to have your own preparation as best as you can. So a communication plan is everything from if you have kids that are at school, how are they going to get a hold of you? If you're at work, do you have out of state contact that you can call in case the local phones go down, which we've seen in previous disasters. So we want to just again encourage you to develop a family plan and ideally a neighborhood plan at some point, and then having as much resources at home to take care of yourself. And it's a tough subject when we say, yeah, make a kit, have 3 days of food and have $500 in cash. Very, I just want to be clear that we're sensitive that not everyone has that ability to just buy their way out of an emergency. But there are lots of different ways in some of the links that we can share can show more economical ways to be better, to help increase your preparedness at home. So when I say make a kit, I understand it's not something that a lot of people can just pull out their credit card and buy everything. But being in the mindset of having gathering things over the course of a year or 2 years to build your stocks at your home. Um, Again, if we were more interactive in person, we'd spend a little more time talking about what do you have, what do you have. But I know we have a lot to cover tonight, so I'm just high level talking about these things. Next slide. So with that, and we're going to come back to some more preparedness stuff, but we're going to pivot over to talk about how you're going to get notified in time of emergency. And so I'm going to hand this over to Lorena to speak a little bit specifically about the alert and warning system that is one of our tools for, getting help to you in time of emergency. So I'll hand it off to you, Lorena.
Thanks, Rick. And you'll all notice that we are still part of the be ready stage here. And so I want to make sure that um, as we go through the slides for the community warning system, you understand like the portion of why we have it here and be ready. And then there's also a portion of taking action. But before we do that, I want to give everybody a little bit of a glimpse into kind of what the process is for an alert activation in the county. So as you all may know, Contra Costa County's community warning system is the all hazard system that is designed to alert the community of any emergency or disaster that may be happening at your location. We are the county's community warning system. And by that, I mean, we not only service the unincorporated, but we are the community warning system for all 19 jurisdictions across Contra Costa County. And we've developed a standardized process in which all public safety agencies are able to connect to us and request an emergency alert when there is something like a wildfire or hazardous materials release or anything of that nature. So this is a process that is standard across the board. And how that applies to you is more towards the end of when we send out the alert. But I think it's important to just so you guys understand what the mechanism is to communicate with us. We aren't just standing by waiting for, monitoring systems and checking to see if there's a fire on there. There's very specific things that need to happen before we are called to activate a CWS alert. And so the standardized process is if there's an incident such as a wildfire, we, of course, are going to have public safety agencies that are going to be responding. Depending on the incident, it is the incident commanders. We send out emergency alerts on behalf of the incident commanders in the field. So all this incident commanders are public safety agencies such as fire and law. They make the determination of requesting a community warning system alert via the Contra Costa Sheriff's Office dispatch center. Once they get notified that there is a community warning system alert that is being requested, we will get a call from the dispatch center. We have duty officers on staff 24/7 who are fully trained in the community warning system to send out that notification or that alert, within minutes of receiving the call. When we receive the call, we are going to be confirming critical details such as what is the location that is being affected, what is the requesting agency that is requesting the alert, what is the hazard, and what is the protective action that they are asking the public to take. There is a lot more that we also talk about, like if there's road closure information that can be, if sometimes depending on how long the incident has developed, there's potential for shelter information, additional road closure information that we could potentially put into the alert. But our goal is to send out the alert to the community as fast as we are able to with the information that we have available to us. We confirm all of these details with the incident commander in the field because they are the ones that know, for instance, for this example, they know where the fire is headed. They know what community is going to be impacted. They know to what extent the evacuations need to be. We don't make those decisions. We make sure that we work with the public safety agencies to send out the alert. We are the voice in which incident commanders communicate with you, the public. Once we have all of those information, once we have all of that critical information, we then craft the alert, and within minutes, we send out that information to the public. When we send out the information to the public, we have a variety of tools at our disposal to communicate with the public. We have sirens. Sirens are very specific to sheltering in place due to hazardous materials release. But we do have phone, text, and email. Our website will always have our alerts that are posted to it. We post all of our alerts to Facebook, X, and then we also have WIA capabilities. These are wireless emergency alerts that we can geographically target an area and make sure that almost all residents that are in the area, residents or non-residents that are in that area, are able to receive the alert. In the event that it is potentially a catastrophic incident, where all forms of communication may be down, we also have the ability to send out emergency alerts through the emergency alert system, which is TV and radio. And then for areas that have very low bandwidth, we also have the capability of sending out alerts through the National Weather Service weather radios. So these are some, not all, of the types of alerts that you guys will be receiving. It's very important for you all to understand what to do when you receive this alert. When you receive these alerts, these are meant for you to take action. The community warning system does not send out emergency notifications, or I'm sorry, does not send out notifications to the public that are not actionable, such as road closures, like day-to-day road closures or stoplights being out or community events. We are strictly for emergency alerts, which means that if you get an emergency alert, that means it's very critical and you need to take action. So for wildfires, you are more familiar with evacuation warnings and evacuation orders. Evacuation warnings, you'll see in the message that it's telling the resident to prepare to evacuate. And an evacuation order is a lawful order from the incident commander saying you need to leave now. It's very important that residents understand the difference between these two, but also if you don't feel safe, if there's a fire and you don't feel safe, it's important for that emergency preparedness to kick in. If you don't feel safe, leave now. For hazardous materials incidents, we do have shelter in place. This is go indoors, shut all your windows and go inside, shut all your windows and doors, and tune into the local radio, TV, or any of your communication channels. In the message here, it will tell you to go indoors. Shelter in place means for residents to go inside and tune in. We also send alerts like law enforcement activities, lockdowns, or avoid the area due to some form of law enforcement activity. That could potentially be an active shooter, that could potentially be a barricaded subject. It very much depends on the law enforcement activity. But again, we send out alerts, and when we send out alerts, we're asking the community to take a protective action so that you are able to take yourself from the risk. We also do have one alert, which is the attempt to locate an at-risk missing person. This is not. This is very specific to people who are that we are attempting to locate due to at risk. So usually they're elderly with dementia or a young child with some form of disability that are at risk due to this disability. We do not issue any type of alerts that have to do with kidnappings. Those are strictly Amber Alerts that are sent out through the California Highway Patrol. So I want to make sure that's very distinct. So these are just some of the alerts that you guys would receive and some of the protective actions that are attached to them. So why is it important for you all to register? Well, we talk a lot about wireless emergency alerts. For wireless emergency alerts, you don't need to register. Every single resident or non-resident that's in the area, we use wireless emergency alerts to target the majority of those residents in the area, as long as they have wireless emergency alert capable phones. But it's important for you to register because in the alert, you're going to get a lot more information from us when you register to receive emergency alerts from the community warning system. Um, this will provide a significant, much more details of the emergency, what's affected. Wireless emergency alerts have character limitations, and so we have to make sure that it's very succinct. But if you register for the community warning system, you're getting tons more information, and you're getting directed to a website that will have much more information on there as well. So how you register, if you haven't registered, you can take out your phone right now while I'm talking and go to cwsalerts.com. You want to click on the register for CWS alerts tab. And then you also want to make sure you complete your profile. Your profile allows you to add up to three phone numbers that are SMS capable, and then up to three addresses and three emails for you to register. So what we see normally is that when people are registering themselves, they're also registering their loved ones. And we'll provide the link at the very end as well. So what do you do when you get the alert? So like I said, when you get an alert from the community warning system, it means that you need to take action now. We're not just telling you that something's happening. We're telling you something's happening and that you need to do something. So again, if you get an evacuation warning, we're telling you to prepare to evacuate because the chances are that there may be an evacuation order coming. If you get an evacuation order, that's a lawful order for you to leave now because you are unsafe and you need to get out of the area. And again, just like I reiterated earlier, for shelter in place, go inside, shut your windows and doors, and tune into local media. So this is on here, you'll see an example of what our evacuation orders look like through wireless emergency alerts. And that's why I'm going to reiterate that it's important for you to register because as you see here, you just see evacuation order due to a fire and leave now, but you want to get all the other information that gets attached to that. Here is the QR code if you guys want to take out your phones and scan it right now to register for the community warning system. And now we've moved into the taking action and what do you do when you get the alert. But now I'm actually going to transfer it. I think this is the end of my portion of it, and I'm actually going to send it back to Rick for further explaining what the take action portion of our presentation goes through.
Thanks, Lorena. Yeah, I just want to reiterate the last slide that Lorena was talking about. One of the things we found this year is we've gone out to the communities and talked about preparedness and alert and warning, and there it was an interesting perception that we were able to better understand. We were at a community meeting, and that community had had a wildfire evacuation just in the previous 6 months, and there was a lot of concern and questions about the CWS system itself. And there was a kind of a light bulb moment for me. So we asked some more questions, and they said, yeah, when the fire happened, we got the message, but we didn't know what to do. And this is where we really are trying to combine the preparedness message with the CWS alerting message. The alert is 100% successful if you got it and it said get out. The message isn't going to tell you exactly, in a perfect world, it will tell you which street to go down, where to turn left, where to turn right, and how to get to area of safety. But sometimes in the exigencies, the incident commander just wants to get people out of the area, and that's the safest thing they can do in that time frame. So the next piece of the alert and warning is, okay, now you've got the message. Now you as a resident need to make some decisions, and there's going to be some gaps in information coming from that message just because things are moving quickly. So we really want to emphasize when you get the message, there's an action to take. So if it's to get out of your house, if you know it's going to take you how long do you think it's going to take you to get in your car and get out? That's pre-planning. You need to think about that. So if you haven't practiced an evacuation plan and what you're going to grab and what you're going to leave and who you're going to take, that's part of that decision making. When you get that alert and warning message, it means you need to get out. So the next, piece is what are you going to have ready? Some people have go kits. They have things by their doors or in their closets where they can grab. Some people have stuff in their car so they can just get in their car. So the key here is we want to encourage a thought process with the residents to, okay, you got the message. Now you've got to take some action. So that's understanding what that means. And so pre-planning where you might go, as I mentioned earlier, if you had a plan that you got a friend or a restaurant across town that you're going to meet your family at or in another city, you should have that pre-planned out because the message is going to say go. And now you as a resident have to in a stressful environment, in a very scary environment, in a very fast-moving environment, make decisions, get in your car or get on a bus or get down the road. And so we want to really start transitioning how we're doing some of our training around being prepared for that. So next slide. So the disaster's over. You've evacuated. You either, you got out safely, the fires come through or the earthquakes happened. Now the next step is, okay, what's going to happen once things are not normal, but safe to return. And so there's a lot of processes to go back home. And you may be released to go back home after an earthquake or after a wildfire, but your home may not be ready for you because of, the first responders aren't necessarily going to go into every home if they don't have to. So after an earthquake, you might have damage. So when you return, you want to think about what damage there might be that is going to affect you actually staying at that house. So we also want to encourage you to think about things like that. So there's CERT training and other training around being able to assess, home damage. But you want to be real careful about that. If we've been in a power outage situation, uh, I know refrigerators can stay cool for a certain amount of time, but if you've been away from your home and you think that there's spoilage, the mantra is when in doubt, throw it out. Don't try to milk, don't try the milk if it's a little bit curdled. And so you have to do some assessment of your personal property and your the stuff that was left at home when you came back from the evacuation. We want you to record damage, and this is important from whether it's a wildfire, earthquake, or other type of damaging event. We at the county and in cities are going to be assessing both public property damage and private property damage. And so having residents be able to communicate that their homes are damaged helps us then go to the state and the federal government and ask for resources to help get us back to normal operations. And so recording damage is important. You'll need to report to your insurance companies if you have damage, but it also helps us track the actual impacts of the disaster. We'll be continuously updating information on our website, the county website. You will see updates on the community warning system website. I know I see Contra Costa Fires on the call here, and they'll have information there. So it's a good idea for you to do the research ahead of time to know where to find those links. So in post emergency, you're not stressing out trying to find where you can get that information. And another thing to really uh, think about is when was the last time you've talked to your insurance company about your coverage? One of the biggest things that we see post disaster is um, insurance companies and the assumption that the insurance company coverage that the homeowner has is enough to make up the difference. And so we really encourage as you're doing your preparedness, your pre-event preparedness and thinking about evacuation plans and thinking about kits, you're also looking at your insurance company and your plans that you have to make sure that they can meet whatever potential damages you might have impacting your home. Next slide. So stay safe, engage your network. And so this is a great group. You guys, I think, meet regularly as a community to, I'm sure you talk about a lot more than just emergencies, but the fact that you have a group that meets regularly, you've got a network that can start um, or I guess enhance your family networks. If you have, good relationships with neighbors, you guys can band together and help get through these events. Um, so with that being said, again, I think the key mantra that I want to, to um, reinforce is the more developed your network is, probably the easier your community is going to get through this event when it happens. So we talk about, making sure your family's prepared, you have friends, and if you have caregiver givers, but we really encourage also that neighbor to neighbor community. Like, if you know your next door neighbor, you can check on them and they can check on you. And if there's things that people need help with, maybe you guys can share some resources to get through this event. So networks are huge. We see these in post disasters, that a lot of times community networks are built after the event because everyone gets together and goes, "Oh, that was awful," and it's a shared experience. And so we really want to encourage communities doing that ahead of time and building those networks to help enhance the ability to get through these events. Next slide. All right, so this is going to be hard because you can't click on these. So this is the thing that we'll send over to Sohelia so she can share. These are just some resources you can get some very specific information about preparedness. So ready.gov is a big federal one, and there's a lot of links in there. These are easy to find if you just want to Google them. Obviously, the Red Cross, Lorena's team with the alert and warning, CWS alerts. Listos is a Cal OES California program that does a lot of preparedness. And ready.gov has some very specific things for elderly. So we'll share these resources if that is helpful. But we just wanted to remind this group that there's a lot out there that you can start. If you haven't already started gathering the information, there's a lot of links to resources. So I think we're coming to our last slide. And so this is now our ask of you. Um, so the county has funded a very large study and program to assess both emergency management in the county as well as alert and warning. And so we're knee deep in the assessment with the contractor that's doing this work, and they've developed a survey to get community input on really around knowledge around what alert and warning is and what preparedness is. And the idea here is it's going to give a pretty good benchmark of gaps where, we as a county should improve our community outreach. And so we really encourage everyone to try and do this survey. So there's a URL there, but we'll send, if you haven't already seen these flyers, we'll send these along too, so you can share. And it's an individual. So if you have 5 people in your home, all 5 of you can answer the questions separately. And it really, the key here is it's going to help us develop a framework for building our preparedness and community alert and warning messaging going forward. So anything you guys can do to encourage your friends and family and neighbors to take this survey, we really are asking for that help. So with that, I think that's the end of our thing. So I think we can open up for questions. I know we sped along and talked about a lot of things, but just want to say thanks for the time tonight.
Thanks, Rick. And just to kind of go back to this slide over here, we are asking all of our residents to not only take the survey, but share it with your friends and family who live or work in Contra Costa County through all of your channels, because we want to maximize the amount of feedback that we get from our community so that we can be better and we can make better informed decisions on how to make improvements for community warning system, as well as for the Office of Emergency Services on preparedness efforts. So we do thank you guys all for taking the survey in advance, but also sharing it with your community and with all of your communication channels. And then, yeah, any questions that you guys have for us?
Well, thank you very much, Lorena and Rick. Very informative, excellent information. I really appreciate it. Before I open it to questions, Lorena, there's a phone number for residents who don't have access to email. Would you like to share it for registering for community warning system?
Oh, yes, I can put that in the chat right now.
Yes, please. And also email it to me along with all the links. I'll share it with the community. And I will share the survey information along with the link of this recording with the community as well. Thank you so much. Any questions so far? Anyone? If
Come
not,
on,
then
Maureen.
I can start with some questions myself. First of all, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation, also Lorena, for the evacuation drill that we had. As Rick said, the messaging is very important. When I looked at my evacuation drill, it said this is a test. I thought it was a test of the signal. I didn't read the rest. So, yeah, I hope we can work a little more on the messaging. Rick, we just had an evacuation drill for the city. We hope to have one for the unincorporated El Sobrante, and we'll be in touch with you in that case. One thing we're working on is neighbor to neighbor. As you said, that networking is very important. I don't know if you have enough staff to help us, but we are trying to come up because Firewise communities are a very good start. We also have block captains, we have neighborhood councils, and maybe we can use those to start with a neighbor to neighbor planning that can be replicated throughout the community. Before I continue, I see a question in the chat. Do I? Okay, there's a question from Sarah saying, from East Richmond, where should we evacuate to?
It's really hard to answer a question like that because every event is going to be dictated by the conditions of the emergency. So, the way that the incident commanders are they're gonna look at if this is a fire scenario. So the fire is up on a ridge, and it may be burning in one direction or the other. So for me to say where to go right now is I can't tell you that because I won't we won't know because if I say, hey, you should go down San Pablo Avenue southbound, and then that's where the fire is. So we have to be real flexible, and so it goes back to you as a resident, and I know there's a lot of concern and conversations about the lack of accessible evacuation routes. And that's not something that's going to be answered anytime soon. But I think as a resident, having options. So, like I'm using my own residence here. I have only two directions to go, north or south on the road that I live on. From there, though, there's feeder roads, and so I take time to think about, okay, if this was to happen on this side of my residence, where am I going to take myself this way? So I'm not answering the question. I know I'm rambling, but the key again is that personal research to understand that if you can't go this way, is there another way out? So we don't publish like evacuation centers uh, or shelters ahead of time because it's just dependent on the incident. So we'll set those things up conditional to the geography and the location of the event. So it's just hard for me to answer your question.
Thank you, Maureen.
Hi, and so Healy, I just want to add to a little bit what Rick said.
Sure.
Um, you know, Rick's office is strategic. We're looking at things strategically as when we're talking about evacuations. We want to make sure that the residents keep in mind that we work with the incident commanders to try to get a direction for the residents, but sometimes one is not available. And so that's why we're here to say residents should be prepared, should create their emergency preparedness plan to make sure that they know, how to get out. But when there is an incident, if the incident commander has a location in which we are able to send residents, we'll put that in the alert, right? But it's not dependent on me and Rick, right? It's dependent on the information that the incident commander has. It's dependent on how the community prepares for emergencies. Um, and so that's really the key thing is making sure that we continue to work on our emergency preparedness plans. And then when you mentioned earlier you read the alert and then you didn't keep going, right? Like read the alert, right? Like every resident should read all of the alert
I
because there's
didn't know it was an
you know
alert. It says this is a test. That's why I didn't
yeah,
identify it as an alert. Then
yeah.
I
And so
realized my mistake.
yeah, no, and that's okay, right? But like residents, when you guys sign up for community warning system, you know, this Richmond evacuation exercise was a really good opportunity to show people what that's going to come through and what that's going to look like, right? we only tested the text messages and the emails in this event, but you're going to get a variety of different types of through a variety of different ways in which you're going to get that alert. And so it's important to read that alert because there's going to be information on there that you are going to need, but also prepare. Know your area, know how to get out, and then when you have that information, when you get the alert, take action.
Yes, and now one thing we did with Contra Costa Fire Safe Council was a simulation of traffic showing people that when a fire starts and evacuation starts, then traffic is going to be horrible. You need to be ready, pre-evacuate if possible, and if not, leave home as soon as possible. Also, as you said, I learned it from our fire chiefs that it depends on the direction of wind and fire and everything. Thank you so much for that. Maureen, please.
Sure. Thanks, Rick and Lorena. I kind of know the part of the answer to this, but can you talk about resources that people can go to as far as finding out what are good evacuation routes? For instance, is the Genesis system, is that something that um, the public can access on different websites to help them understand, uh, you know, what areas are being evacuated? Or should the public just rely on the CWS?
I can answer that, Maureen. So
Thanks.
we do work very closely with Contra Costa Fire Protection District to make sure that Genesis zones are incorporated into the community warning system. So if there is a zone that is being utilized, we'll put that in the message. Um, so if Richmond has an evacuation and says like we want to evacuate zone 1, 2, and 3, we're going to put that in the message, but we're also going to put a description of the area that's being evacuated. In the absence of us having an evacuation zone, right, because maybe not all jurisdictions use it, then we're still going to put a description of the area that's being evacuated. You're going to have a link to our website, and that link to the website is going to have a dynamic map that where you will be able to see whether you're in the impacted area. And from there, again, preparedness plan is very important because, um, if you need to evacuate, then you yourself know how to get out in the absence of there being that direction from the incident commanders.
Thank you.
Mhm.
There's a suggestion for you to have a presentation for our neighborhood councils. Richmond Council of Neighborhood Councils, I guess, meets on the first Monday of the month. If your time allows, I'll be happy to arrange one. Also, I'm thinking about arranging presentation for you for the mayor's conference because our mayors and council members need to know about it to pass the information on to the residents. Sia, please.
Hi, thanks. My question is about the geographic distribution of the alerts. I know that if somebody has a registered cell phone, they'll get a text message. And if they've registered their email address, they'll get an email. And if they are not registered, but their cell phone is in the area, they'll get the basic alert. My question is that geographic one that goes out to people who aren't registered but who are just in the area, is that confined to cell phones or does that also hit landlines?
It's
So the what you're referring to are the wireless emergency alerts and the wireless emergency alert system that the county utilizes to send out emergency alerts to phones that are WIA capable, and that's usually those that's very limited to smartphones, right? But that's why it's very important for you not to just rely on that, right? Because we use all of the tools. We're not picking and choosing like I'm going to use phones here and then WIA here, right? Like we're sending WIA, we're sending text messages, we're sending email, we're sending phone calls because when there's an emergency, sometimes technology falls short, right? And so if we use all of those methods, chances are you're going to get at least one of them, right? And so, yes, we use wireless emergency alerts for smartphones that are WIA capable, but also registering for the community warning system also gives you an additional redundancy form of getting that alert.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think just if I can just jump in on when Lorena talks about all those tools, the goal of the tools is to alert that something's happening. And one of the things that we want to encourage is you may not get so you hear the siren. The siren's not going to tell you anything other than there's something. So that's your encouragement. Then either get online or get on the TV, see what's happening. And so any of the tools that you hear or see or get is really encouraging you to dig deeper and get more information. And so that's where we again encourage you to be able to find those websites. The CWS website is really going to be our catch-all for all of the alert and warning stuff. So if you got part of the message or your text didn't come through, but you got the phone call, now you can go on, if you can go online and see what is going on. And so that's part of that, again, that personal preparedness, that we're going to give you some sort of message, but it's not going to be enough for you to answer all the questions. And that's where you as a resident have to um, take a little bit of ownership and trying to help yourself in that event.
Yeah, my only concern was just I know there are a few elderly residents in my community who they have cell phones, but they keep them, turned off or in another room. They're not as plugged in. And so I was just wondering if like local phone numbers for those who still have landlines are gonna get any sort of alert.
Oh,
If they're registered.
Only
so
if they're
yeah,
registered. Okay.
I can answer that. So it depends on like what type of phone. We do have a database that we incorporate. We purchase data from Comcast. We also have data from AT&T, and through our reverse 911 database that we incorporate into the system. So some of these landlines are automatically basically are automatically imported into our system for us to be able to do a reverse 911 call to these residents that have landlines. However, there's no way of us telling whether that specific landline is in our database. And so the best way that we can, the best option or solution that I can give to that resident is just call us. We'll be happy, they don't, if you guys don't have, if they don't have a computer or are not tech savvy, just call us. We'll sign you all up. We'll make sure that the information is there. Um, my staff is pretty easy, like we'll walk you through the entire process and we'll make sure that that resident is registered for sure.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Before we go to Rocky, I just wanted to add that as Cliff mentioned, PG&E power supply is not reliable. So we are trying to add one more tool to the CWS's tools, and that's long-range acoustic devices that work with solar and satellite. And even if there is no phone connection or electricity, they would still be working. So we hope we can get that. Rocky, go ahead, please.
Yeah, good evening. I was just curious about the current saturation within the population of Contra Costa County. What's the percent of people who have signed up for CWS as a percent of the population? Thank you.
Thanks, Rocky. That's a good question. I get that question a lot. And actually, it's not a simple answer only because, again, we work with user accounts, not necessarily residents. So when people register for the community warning system, like I have an account and I have myself, my husband, right? If my mom lived in the area, I would also probably have my mom in there, right? So when we're talking about the amount of people that we have signed up in the community warning system, it's actually not an easy answer. And we're not actually able to extrapolate that data. What I can tell you is that we have over 120,000 user accounts that are self-registered. And that could mean that we have anywhere between one address to three address from one phone number to up to three phone numbers per account that could be registered, with each individual account. In addition to that, though, we have over 300,000 purchase data that we have incorporated, like I mentioned earlier, with the reverse 911 system, Comcast, and AT&T. So in total, we have close to 500,000 user accounts. And so again, you can do the math on that, but we have a pretty large percentage of Contra Costa, I would say, that is signed up for community warning system. However, again, just because you're not registered doesn't mean that like you're going to be forgotten, right? We still have wireless emergency alert capabilities. And so our goal with this is not to focus on how many people are registered. We still want to increase the registrations, right? Because you still want to make sure you get that alert, have the redundancy form. But our goal is that altogether, through all of our tools, we can capture as many people as possible.
And I'm
Yeah, and on
assuming
that,
that that data is geocoded so you know where you have good saturation and you can then focus your marketing on those areas that are not as good.
So
Is that
we
right?
work closely with our cities
Yeah.
to make sure that we're able to get the word out to get a high concentration of the population to register for the community warning system. Yes, we do. We do work. We have major campaigns throughout the county. So we've done that past in the La Miranda area, where the La Miranda did a whole year of campaigning. We supported them. And then we also had Richmond do the same. And then we had areas in East County who also asked for the same thing. So we're constantly, not just through outreach, but through partnerships, we're constantly trying to get the word out. People leave the county, people come into the county. Um, so we're this is kind of a never ending effort. But again, we have multiple tools at our disposal to make sure that we are able to capture a significant portion of the people that are geographically targeted. And WIA capabilities have a pretty high percentage in being able to target the residents with WIA capable phones.
Do you post those numbers anywhere online so people can see where you have the concentration of registrations or anything like that?
We don't. That's very much an internal use. Again, it would be
Okay.
very confusing for the residents if we had that data because there's a lot of explanation that we would have to do. And the important thing is what really the goal that we want to have is making sure that what you guys repeat out to the community is, hey, are you registered for community warning system? If you're not, go to cwsalerts.com.
yeah,
Terrific.
and that's what
Thank
I
you.
wanted to touch on. We're a very small team and limited resources to be able to get that message out as well as we should. But I want to deputize all of you as disaster diplomats to go to your friends and family and work coworkers and ask them, are they registered? And if not, show them that QR code. We and I sound like I'm joking, but we would love for the community to help the community get registered too. So take that as an action item for you as residents. Ask your neighbors if they're. I won't ask this group because I don't want to embarrass anyone. But how many people are signed up for CWS? Well, what is that? Or you'll be surprised. There's a lot of people in the county know what it is, but there's still gaps, and we're always trying to build that. So anything you can do to help us, that would be awesome.
Um, I have a quick question if there are no other questions. Is there any attempt for a Spanish outreach, or would the messages at some point be, sent in Spanish as well? Like half the population, 46% of population here are Hispanics.
Yeah, so our messages, our protective action messages do go out both in English and Spanish, and there is an option in the registration site. We also have a Spanish registration page that I can send you the link to, I believe. But if you select to register for Spanish alerts, you will get a Spanish alert. And then again, all of our alerts get routed to our website where you can toggle the languages on our website. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect solution, right? But we do have Google Translate on our website, and it will translate the alerts that are posted to our website.
Excellent. Thank you. And let me read Clip's question. Will PG&E power supply be strong and reliable enough to rely on during an emergency? The system crashed during Loma Prieta.
Uh, I could answer that, but I'm not PG&E, so I really can't. So I think the key here is we don't know if it will, depending on what the event is. We know that, wildfires knock power out. The message again is trying to encourage the community to be prepared for those events. I was just today at an exercise in the city of Orinda. They did their EOC did an activation exercise, and that topic came up there because they have experience in the middle of wildfires where the cell phone towers have gone down and their cell phones don't work. And so The answer is I don't know if it will. I can anecdotally say that PG&E has done a lot of work since the early PSPSs in 2019 and 2020 to build their capacity and have it be more robust. But to answer the question if they can handle that, I don't know. And a Loma Prieta or a Hayward Fault type of disaster is going to have a lot of issues. Power might just be one of the issues that happen.
Thank you. I have one last question. I know it's 8 o'clock. We have to finish. I'll make it quick. So I attended a working group, wildfire safety organized by Senator Tim Grayson. Um, the Orinda city manager shared that they had been sued by residents for wildfire safety. They were doing things. And during her presentation, she mentioned that based on her experience, it would take 26 minutes to activate community warning system after they learn about an incident. The protocol is a little too lengthy. Is there a way we can make it faster or reduce the number of steps, like the incident commander would be able to activate it, or going back and forth, verifying the information? Could we make it shorter in any way?
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot. And, process wise, this process really works. I mean, if you want to take a stab at looking at all the processes across the state, Contra Costa actually is number one in its processes. And so I know that the community is concerned that, it takes a long time. There are decisions that need to be met in the field before, they decide that a community warning system is determined. And I won't speak for the public safety agencies because they do have processes that need to take place. Um, for the community warning system specifically, we train all of our staff. This is our full-time job. I have three staff, myself included. I have three staff. This is our full-time job to make sure that we're up to speed with everything and all capabilities that are the community warning system and alert and warning across the state. And so again, there's there are different processes that each jurisdiction has. We're catering to all of Contra Costa County, not just the city of Richmond, not just the city of Martinez, or La Miranda. And each one of those agencies has a different process in how they deal with their emergencies. And so this is the closest to standardization that we can get. And sometimes I think what is misinterpreted is that from start to finish an incident, right? People see fire and they want to get the alert within 5 minutes. But just like I explained, right? Like there's a fire and there still has to be, agencies that go out there to respond to the emergency. There still needs to be a determination of whether or not an emergency alert is required. And then the emergency alert needs to be requested. And so we're constantly working with our public safety partners to to shorten that length. But really, the reality is that this is why we're out here today, because we're trying to tell the public, look, if you feel unsafe, leave. Don't wait for the alert, right? If you see fire and you think it's coming your way and you're scared, go. Don't wait until the emergency happens. I'm sorry, don't wait until the emergency alert happens or that we send out the emergency alert. Just go make that decision for yourself. That's why we're here, because you need to be prepared. Because in the event that something like this happening, things are happening quick. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Thank you so
I'll
much.
dovetail on that real quick too. They're constantly trying to improve on that. I would question Orinda having stats that they can honestly say 26 minutes because I don't think they have enough data to say that that's the average. But that being said, Lorena and her team are constantly working on it. One of the things that they've been doing yeoman's work this year on is going out to incident commanders and providing very specific targeted training to the incident commanders so they can make decisions quicker to activate the system. Really, the time lag once CWS gets notified, it's about 7 minutes from start a call to pushing the message out. So there's a lot of lot of issues with the information in the middle of an emergent disaster or fire, getting that information to community warning system. The incident commanders won't be able to execute that system the way the system is built today. There's just not a way to have that um, message come from someone that's not a professional, meaning when I say professional, her staff of three, this is all they do. And so then you're trying to train, 100 different incident commanders to that level of skill while they're also managing a fire. They have to delegate it to the CWS team. So there's not a quick fix, but part of this assessment that we're going through, this very large assessment, is looking at all the systems that CWS uses, and there's probably going to be some good assessments on here's some areas of improvement. So it's we hear that message. We want to be quicker too, and we as a team are working really hard to make it better. And the county has invested a lot of money to do that assessment to have an outside entity of alert and warning professionals look at the system and come up with other solutions that might improve it. So we're continually building it and moving in the right direction. I would love to say we could get that message start to finish out in 2 minutes. There's no there's no world that that's ever going to happen in. And to Lorena's point, our system, I work with almost every county in the state, and I know how they do alert and warning. In most counties, it's a collateral duty of the emergency manager or the police officer. There aren't too many counties that have three dedicated people to manage that system and maintain that system. So we're in a very strong position. And I know as an end user, you might not see that, but I think the message is we have a strong system, but we also have a culture of continuous improvement. And so we take that feedback and, I appreciate the question. So, and we are trying to make it better. There are going to be system limitations that it's never going to be perfect. Or when I say perfect, it's never going to be community expectation versus what actually we can do in reality are going to be really tough to bring to the center.
I
And so,
appreciate.
Helia, I know we're past the time, but I do want to make sure that we manage a little bit of expectations with the community when we talk about, time frames. Um, you know, per our policy, we're trying to send out these alerts between 10 to 15 minutes of when we get the call, right? Most of those alerts are sent out within 7 to 8 minutes, but that is on a perfect occasion when we have, the location, when we have the hazard, when we have all the information that's necessary for us to quickly gather that and then push it out. Sometimes we don't have all the information, so we're calling and we're helping guide, the incident commander in like what area they want to alert and things of that nature. And sometimes it can take a little longer. That's not to say that we're not always practicing with them, that we're not always coordinating with them. But again, I'm going to go back to that. That's why it's important for us to prepare, right? So that we're not waiting for the alert, so that we're taking action should we feel unsafe. Um, and managing expectations that there are going to be situations in which if it is catastrophic to that effect where everything is down, it could take a little bit longer for the community warning systems to send out an alert. um, that's why as residents, and I live here in Contra Costa County, so that's why as a resident of Contra Costa County, I need to be prepared.
Thank you. And I really appreciate your sharing the protocol. It's the first time I see how CWS is activated. So that transparency is greatly appreciated because transparency is a precursor to accountability. And I hope that we can continue close collaboration. We, as a community-based organization that is working very hard to help the community to become prepared, we need your help and we'll provide feedback. And we look forward, to continue the relationship and yeah, hopefully help the West Contra Costa County residents on our end to be better prepared and better informed. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for coming and join West Contra Costa Fire Safe Council mailing list. If you're not a member, send me an email, soheilabana@gmail, and let's just stay in touch. And thank you so much again, Lorena Herrera and Kovar. Good night, everyone.
Good night.